Hello, warriors. Hope you all are doing good and preparing well for the upcoming exams. Welcome to this channel named Inside Angle and this series named The Final Battle. So, as promised, I'm making a few videos that will probably help you perform well in those 16 days of exams, which are the most important. This video specifically is about managing the 3 hours of exam and the strategy that you should be following or you may follow in those 3 hours. So there are a lot many do's and don'ts when it comes to those 3 hours or those 16 days, which I will be following in the upcoming videos. But the most important of all is those 3 hours of exam, which is why I'm covering that as a part of this video first. So yes, now I'll try and address a few common questions, but let us start with the reading time of the 15 minutes that we are allotted. As you all might be knowing that we do not get the MCQ question paper in the first 15 minutes. You get the MCQ question paper only when the actual 3-hour time starts. The 15 minutes that you get is solely to read the subjective question paper for the MCQ subjects and the question paper for the non-MCQ subjects. The thing, I mean, this is very obvious and you all know this. The 15 minutes are meant to make a choice of which question are you going to attempt first, which are you, or rather in what sequence are you going to attempt the questions, which are the 5 questions that you're going to attempt. The way I used to go about this is, so the choice of questions is actually very important. I'll give you 2 examples, one of a good question choice and one of a bad question choice in my own case. When it was about FR, there was question 6 of the paper, July 21 FR paper, which had 4 5-marker questions, which I felt were probably deserving more than 5 marks, but were kept as a 5-marker question in the question paper. And so I felt that answering that particular question, that is question 6, would eat up a lot of time, resulting in me not being able to complete the paper, which is why I chose not to attempt question 6 and attempted the remaining 5 questions. This is an example of a good question choice. I mean, I knew people who went for question 6 and in turn, unka paper chhoot gaya, either 20, 25 marks, whatever. I was able to attempt 100 marks and I got 86 marks. I was able to get 86 marks only because I had attempted 100 marks. While if it were for not a correct question choice, if I would have attempted just 80, maybe the highest I would have got is maybe 70 or even if 72. So that is an example of a good question choice that I make. So to choose a question, obviously we'll consider many factors. If you know all the questions, the only factor you have to consider is the time that you will take in answering that particular question and obviously the marks that you expect to get. If you are, say for example, a question has 2 10-markers and you are very confident about the first 10-marker, but not about the second 10-marker. Well, there is another question of 20 marks and you know कि शायद right भी हो सकता है, शायद wrong भी हो सकता है. Now, how do you go about making this particular choice? Just a hypothetical example. In this particular case, I will probably, if I were in your place, what I would have done is answered the remaining 4 questions first. The question between 5 and 6, I mean, hypothetically say the questions are 5 and 6. The question between 5 and 6, I will leave it to the end. Now, for example, I have just 15 minutes to attempt the last question. For me, it makes perfect sense to go for the 20 marks in which there are 2 10 markers, so as to make sure the 10 marker that I know, at least that 10 marker I will be able to attempt and probably get 9 out of 10 in that particular question. But if, for example, I have the time to attempt the full 20 marks question, in that case, I should decide which question will fetch me more marks. So maybe in the former question, in the first question, it could be 9 out of 10. And in the next 10 marker, it could be maybe just 2 out of 10, which comes to 11. But from the 20 marks, you may expect to get, say, for example, 14. Then go for the 20 marker. If not, if it is lesser than 11, then obviously go for the 2 10-mark questions. So this is the way I would have made a choice if it were me in your place. This is the way you should strategize. If you are confused between 2 questions, try to keep the choice towards the last. Obviously, needless to say, start with the I would say not the easiest question, but the question that you are most confident about. Needless to say that. But what is also important is to make sure that if you know a question very well, you obviously will start with it, but make sure not to make sure that the question should not eat up too much of your time. You should not be taking 1 hour for one question, because at the end of that 1 hour, even if you end up scoring 20 marks from that question, now you are panicky because you have your 80 marks of paper left and you have just 2 hours to complete. So that is one thing that you should keep in mind. So FR was an example of a good question choice in my case. I'll tell you about a bad question choice in my case. In SCMPA, I went and attempted question 6 instead of question 5. Question 6 had a 10-marker standard costing question. I felt I'll be able to write that question well because I felt I was good at standard costing. But when I actually happened to see the question, that was question 6B, I felt this is something that I've not seen before. And somehow I felt I'll not be in a position to fetch marks out of this. But by then, I had invested a lot of time writing question 6A, which is why obviously our SCMP paper was lengthy, which is why now I did not have the time to go for question 5 instead of question 6 because I had already written question 6A. I somehow managed to write something in question 6B, but I was not awarded marks for that question. Question 6A, I was awarded 6.5, which means in question 6, I was awarded 6.5 out of 20 marks. Question 5 I did not attempt because it was a theory-oriented question, which the second part of it was a theory-oriented question from beyond budgeting. I felt I'll not be able to get good marks. But post-facto analysis, I feel, had I attempted question 5 instead of question 6, I could have probably fetched at least 10-12 marks for sure. So this was an example of a bad question choice. Nevertheless, see, one thing is the choice will be spur of the moment. Post facto, obviously, you might be regretting the choice, but try to make the perfect choice. So no choice will be a perfect choice, but try to make the best choice possible at that point of time. But do remember, all of this is supposed to be done in the initial 15 minutes of the exam. Now, other factors that I used to keep in mind to make the choice regarding the sequence of answering the questions. Now, say for example, talking about FR. FR was a lengthy paper. A lot many people could not complete the paper, but I was able to attempt 100 marks. Now the catch over here is I was left with just 20 minutes to write the last question of 20 marks, which ideally is very less for a 20-mark question. But I was able to still attempt it because of one reason. The philosophy that I followed for all subjects was start with a question which you are most confident with, but which is not very lengthy. Say for example, even if I'm very confident with a business combination or a consolidation question, I will not start with that. Because if I start with that, that will eat up a lot of time, which will result in me becoming panicky. So for the lengthier questions, which I'm reasonably confident with, I keep it as either the second or the third question in sequence, or even the fourth question, depending on my confidence level. So second or third or fourth, the lengthy plus, so if I'm very confident, I might go for it second or third. If a little bit less confident, I'll go for it fourth. So in my case, consolidation wala question, I was okay-ish, in terms of confidence. And considering it to be a lengthy question, I kept it as fourth in the sequence. The first question I used to keep in sequence was a question which was medium or not as lengthy, but relatively easier, or rather the question that I was confident with. That is the question that I was to start with. The question that I would try and keep towards the last is the question wherein it is more of theory oriented. So for example, DT and IDT, we have at least one question which involves writing theory, right? In case of FR as well, if you can see the July 21 paper, question 2 was involving two sub-questions. One was around analysis of financial statements and another was Ind AS 115 allocation of transaction price. So I was supposed to write some part of theory. So that was not actually theory, there was explanation of whatever question is being asked. So I have to write a little bit of theory in answering that question. Now the good part about writing answers to theory questions is that you get to decide the length yourself. You may keep it short, you may keep it long, depending on the time that you have. This is the philosophy that I used to follow, not just for FR, for all the subjects wherever theory was involved. In FR, DT and IDT, specifically these three, and in fact other papers as well, but specifically these three papers, I had kept the theory-oriented questions towards the last, which is why I was able to complete the papers. In FR as well, say for example, I said I went for question 2 towards the last. It was a little theory-oriented question, and I attempted towards the last. So obviously, I was awarded less marks in that. So I got awarded 13 out of 20 in question 2. But the point I'm trying to make here is I was still able to fetch 13 marks out of that question, even though I had just 20 minutes to attempt it. Obviously, if I would have gotten 30 minutes to attempt that question, I could have increased the marks to 16 by writing more. But I'm looking at the brighter side of it. Rather than not being able to attempt 20 marks, I was able to attempt those 20 marks and still got 13 marks out of it. So this is the theory that I used to follow so far as the sequence of the questions is concerned. And while making the choice of the question, I made it very clear how you have to do it. And regarding whether or not to go for MCQs first, to be honest, it is supposed to be a personal choice. But my own opinion, could be biased, but my own opinion is to go for MCQs first, come what may. That is what I feel. Try not to adopt the practice of going for a few questions first, then going for MCQs, then going for a few questions towards the last. Unless you have practiced accordingly. If you have, you may go for it. Otherwise, what happens is, if, for example, you start with writing the subjective 1 or 2 questions, then you attempt the MCQs, and then you write other questions. If writing the first 2 questions of subjective, hypothetically assuming, takes you an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. So now in 1.5 hours, you are done with just probably 28 marks because one question of subjective in MCQ papers is just 14 marks. Now, within the next 1.5 hours or 1 hour 45 minutes, you're supposed to attempt 72 marks of the paper, which will make you panicky and hyper, which is why you will probably misread even MCQ questions or maybe just simply make casting errors, that is simply make mistake while circling. which is not at all advisable. MCQs will become scoring if you read the question carefully, which is why I would personally suggest you to go for the MCQs first, followed by the subjective part. But then, like I said, it is your own call. If you ask me the suggestion, this is the suggestion that I would give to you. I think that is pretty much when it comes to those 3 hours and 15 minutes of exam. In case if you have any other questions when it comes to these 3 hours and 15 minutes, please, or 4 hours and 15 minutes in case of elective, please do mention in the comment box. I'll try and cover it in the videos to come. Please do share this video with all of your friends having their exams in December, and for the exams as well, will be useful to all of them. Thanks a lot. Stay tuned with this channel. Do like, share, subscribe. Thanks. Bye.